Hello again and welcome back to our course on PowerPoint 2013. In this section we're going to look at adding tables to slides in PowerPoint 2013. The facilities for handling tables of data are very good in PowerPoint nowadays, and what I'm going to use as an example in this section is I'm going to go back to my presentation about the UK Parliament, and I'm going to put in a table about the breakdown of the members of Parliament by party in the House of Commons as it is today as I'm recording this section. So let me insert a new slide. So I'm going to select slide 3 and new slide, and I'm going to do title and content. I'm going to say MPs by party as the title on the slide. I'm going to center that in its text box, so I'm going to click on the center button in the paragraph group on the home tab. And then here in the second content placeholder, if you hover over these, you'll find the first entry is insert table. Click on insert table. Now, one of the options you have with insert table is this one. You get a dialog saying how many columns would you like, how many rows would you like. It may initially be a little bit tricky for you to work that out. You may not quite be certain. Don't worry about that, because you can change the number of columns and the number of rows later on. I'm pretty sure that I only need 2 columns on this one, and I'm only going to need maybe half a dozen rows. I'll say 6 rows. Click on OK. And what I now get is a table inserted into the second content holder on the slide with a space for me to put my numbers in. Now by now you may be seeing a bit of a pattern developing here in that we've inserted yet another different type of content. Tables are a different type of content in PowerPoint, and when you've done that and you've got a table selected as we have here, you can see the selection handles on the corners. Then we have table tools on the ribbon, 2 more tabs. We have a design tab and a layout tab. They are specifically the table tools, and we're going to take a look at those now, and we're going to start with the design tab. Now first of all, when I inserted this table, I said 2 columns and 6 rows. If you're not familiar with tables, then the vertical lines there that the numbers are going to go into are the columns. So I've got 2 columns. That's column 1. Let me just select column 1 with the mouse, and that's column 2. That's column 2. Each of the rows is one of these horizontal lines within the table, and there are 6 of them. Now one of the simplest controls that we have on the design tab is the one in the top left corner of the table style options, because it's checked at the moment and it says header row. If I unchecked it, then I would not have a header row. The header row is different from the rest of the table. Let me click it back on again, and I'm going to type in the header row now the data that I want. On the left column, that's going to say party, and the right column is going to say number of MPs, members of Parliament. And that is the purpose normally of a header row. It enables you to name the attribute, the property that you're putting into that column on the table. And in this case you're saying that the first column contains the party, the second column contains the number of MPs. So let me put some actual data in just to illustrate that a little bit more fully. If I put in under party, Conservative, and under number of MPs I said 303, that would be correct as of today. Now the data I'm entering here is going into these individual what are called cells, and in the cell that I've currently got selected I'm going to type in the second party. Note that when I've entered the data in a cell, I can either press the tab key to go to the next cell, which in this case would be the next cell in the second column, and then I can type in the number of Labour MPs, or I can just click into the cell where I want to put data in. So if I wanted to do these in a completely different order, I can click in any cell now and enter the data in that cell. So let me put in the rest of the data. Now if I get to the end of the cells, so I've used all 6 rows in my table, header row and 5 data rows, and I realise that I need another row or another couple of rows, there are 2 or 3 ways of putting in extra rows. The simplest way when you're in the last cell in the table is to just press the tab key and you get another row. So I'm going to put in this other row a total for the other members of Parliament, which at the moment is 21. So I've entered my table of data. One other option here, if I press the tab key to put another blank line in there, up in the table style options we also have a total row option that's currently not checked. So if I wanted to put in the total number of MPs, I could do that, and it's shaded similarly to the header row. I've also got checked in the table style option banded rows, and the banded rows effect that you can see here, let me just uncheck that and you'll see what banded is. That is unbanded, that's banded. Banded rows, apart from the sort of stylistic side of it, can be very helpful for readers to sort of read across the numbers. Now let's look at the Design tab again. In the middle of the Design tab there's a group called Table Styles that includes a gallery of available table styles. Now the gallery shows that there are quite a few stylistic features that you can use or choose not to use for tables. The styles here are divided into light, medium and dark, and of course you've got live preview. Now as you go through the various options that are available, you have some styles where there are horizontal lines. Let me select one or two of these just to show what they look like. If I click on that first one in the light category, you see, let me just click away so that the table is not selected, you see that what you get these horizontal lines above and below some of the rows. You also have options where the whole of the table has borders around it and borders within the rows and columns. Let's try one of those. So click within the table again to bring up the Design and Layout tab. Click on the Design tab, go down there. Let's choose, say, one of these medium options here. Click away, and with this particular medium option you have a border right round the table. You can of course also, again back into the same gallery, you can also choose different colour schemes. The colour schemes towards the left here are more like the ones we started with, but you could go for a completely different colour scheme, and if you scroll through the available gallery, look at the live preview, you may go for something more like that. So finally, on the Design tab at the right hand end there is a group Draw Borders, and with this group you can actually draw the borders to your exact requirements. So you can select a row or a column or a cell, draw borders with sort of thick at the top and thin at the bottom, any combination of borders that you may require. Now let's turn our attention to the Layout tab and take a quick look at some of the commands available there. Well, first of all, you don't always only need to add rows at the end of a table. Suppose you're in the middle of the table and maybe you've missed a row out. You need to include an additional row somewhere in the middle of the table. Well, if you select a row, as I've got here, the table that begins Liberal Democrat selected, one of the options in the rows and columns group is Insert Above. If I do Insert Above, I get a blank row above that one. There's also an option, Insert Below. I may need to insert an additional column. So if I tick here in the Conservative cell and say Insert Right, I get a whole column on the right of the cell that I had selected. Now I don't always want to insert rows and columns. Sometimes I might want to delete them. So in this case, for example, suppose I want to delete the empty column that I just inserted. All I need to do is select the column. I can either do that by dragging down with the mouse, say, or for example on the Layout tab towards the left there is a Select button. Click on the little arrow at the bottom there and it will let me select a table, a row or a column. At the moment I've got a column selected, so all I've got to do is to click on the Delete button here, the drop down, Delete Columns. That column has gone. Now when I delete a column, as you'll see, it doesn't necessarily resize the whole table, and now I've got a table that's a bit narrow and it's a little bit offset, although to be fair it's narrow enough to contain the information that's in it. So if I wanted to center the table itself on the slide, one way of doing that, if I go back to that select button and say select table, and then go over to arrange, click on the bottom of the align button and say align center, I finish up with the whole table aligned center on the slide. I may then of course want to change my header to align that better with the table. So again, if I click here in this blank row, go back to select, click on select row, click on delete rows, and that unused row has gone as well. So I'd just like to point out a couple of other things on the layout tab. One of them is that there is a group table size here next to arrange. Table size group lets you set the size of the table, and you also have this alignment group, and the alignment group here is really more geared towards aligning single cells or rows or columns. So for instance, let's suppose that I wanted the headers to be aligned center in their cells. If I select that row only, so I could do that with select row, and then went to the alignment group here and clicked on the center, I would center the headings only because I only had that row selected. Similarly, if I wanted to center the numbers here, I could select the cells that have got the numbers in them, perhaps just drag with the mouse like that, center those, and those numbers are centered as well. I would probably keep the party names left aligned. So that's it on the basics of handling tables. I'll see you in the next section.